Welcome to block. Triple blockheads.
Back set. Block down.
The podcast for all things volleyball.
Blockhead.
Aloha and welcome to another episode of Triple Blockheads. Makani here, Frank and Mark, and we're going to go and dive into utilizing the back row as that next attacker. It's really integrated within the women's game now. It's really kind of picking up steam, especially at the P4 level. But it's kind of been a staple hold in the men's side for quite some time. And maybe we'll just go and start there and kind of evolve into, how we can even evolve it more into the women's game. But Frank, as a setter, even as you played collegiately, talk about the importance of that back row attack or any back row offense in the men's game.
Yeah, I think when I first started playing volleyball, the back row attack was like someone you set the ball to because you couldn't set anyone else. It was like you were in trouble, so you had to set someone back row. And that was like my first experience setting someone back row. And then as the game changed for me and I started playing more competitive volleyball, the players around me started being a lot better. The blockers started being a lot better. You had to figure out how could you add another attacker into the situation of the game. So the back row attack, as I played in college, it was really like having another front row attacker, and that was what it really should have felt like if you were running a good offense. Is you're not just setting this person back there, you're trying to set them so that they can get still as close to the block that as they can, where it makes sense for their approach. So the BIC was probably the most popular thing that we ran in college, but we also had a great right side that played back row. So we would set them a lot on what we called a D ball, but just the back right ball. But also a set that we were trying to set the ball really close to the net. I mean, as legally as we could, with that back row player jumping from just right behind the 10-foot line, and the big leapers were able to still land around the 3 or 4 foot line, and we could set them a ball around there. And you can imagine trying to block that. It's really tough. You don't have enough blockers to deal with all of those attackers. So the big is fun, and the D ball is really fun. It can be really risky when you first start because it's a fast set. You don't really see this attacker that you're setting. You don't see them in your peripheral vision as well as maybe you see like the middle right next to you or the outside off to a distance. You can still kind of see them within your visual like frame, where these back row attackers are kind of coming out of nowhere. So you're really trusting the reps that you guys have put in practice to run something that fast. But when you run it well, when we ran it well in college, the college teams that ran it really well, as blockers, you kind of had to pick and choose what you were going to do with certain attackers, because it's kind of like basketball and like a fast break. There's going to be more people on offense than there will be on defense at the net. So
that's really good. That's a really good point. I mean, like you said the word trust there, because I think that's a big thing when you talk about back row attack, because to your point, you usually have one person back, 2 people in front of you. You see what's happening, and the person behind you, there's only one, so that you can't really get in the way. Yeah. But as soon as you start bringing in a 4th attacker, in some cases a 5th attacker, now your spacing is everything, and ensuring that you're trusting where everyone's going to be based on where that pass is going to be. And just the overall, the athleticism that a back row attack presents is different than a front row attack, because the front row attack, you're going to have that net that's there. Yeah. That back row attack, they're flying in. And to talk a little bit about just, how that is different, that approach level is different athletically on a back row attack from a front row attack.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you're jumping at a back row attack, if you're the attacker, you can broad jump a little bit more. You don't have to worry about being super close to the net. You're probably changing the way you swing at a ball compared to if you were front row. You're probably not trying to bounce the ball per se, but you're probably trying to swing deep. You're maybe swinging a little flat and maybe trying to attack the block a little bit. Those are all things that we tried to do sometimes. I think what is important, something that if I could have gone back, I wish I would have had a little more awareness about like this person is in the game because we want to set them the BIC. You know, I feel like that's something that I see now as a coach coaching the girls and try and run the BIC. It's like there's this decision process you have to make. Do you have someone back there that maybe isn't an attacker but a better ball control person? Or do you put someone that's back there that can attack but maybe you sacrifice a little bit of ball control? Like if there's an attacker back there, let's make them part of the offense. That's why they're back there. That's what they're bringing to your rotation in that situation.
So what like kind of percentage are you thinking? Let's say you have a huge right side that can't really pass but is in to hit that D ball that we talked about. What like percentage of their in-system offense are they getting versus maybe mid-system when I get to the 10-foot line and beyond? Like, are we still trying to kick that D, or does that go out to the go?
Yeah, I think if you're in-system and you get 10 in-system passes, I mean, if you have a great attacker in the D ball and they're matched up against someone that's favorable, let's set them, 3 or 4 of those balls potentially,
Yeah, in most of those cases too. I mean, especially if the other opposition is running a 5-1, you're running a 5-1, then you could take a lot of their offense out from that D ball, because then that outside is going to be blocking. They're blocking against that D ball. They're flying ninja out, right?
Yeah.
It just creates a little bit more havoc.
Yeah, and I think it's how you patternize it too. Like, have your middles been successful, and is that going to create something on the D ball? Or are you only setting the D ball when you're like just trying to flip it across the court to try to create a 1-on-1 just because of where you're setting from? Like, so I don't know. I got lucky where when I was setting, I got to set an All-American right side. So like I got used to setting the D ball a lot, where maybe that doesn't make sense if the D ball is maybe a lefty or has a matchup that isn't as favorable. You're still having a really big outside try to block them. Maybe that's not as favorable, to go to the D ball as much.
What kind of location off the net are we talking for like peak, right? If he's trying to hit it at the peak of this D, are we 6 feet off, 5 feet? Like what's your target zone for?
I think it's got to depend on who it is, probably, right? I mean, you don't want them broad jumping too much where they're not able to still reach high. I think that's the decision between a 5-foot set and a 6 or 7 foot.
But what did you do?
We were probably at like probably close to 5 foot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the D ball is one that I think the men's game is really gravitated to, just to spread. And I think you said flip it back. I see that all the time in the men's side, especially younger kids, is that they're out for that D ball is the fact that they just want to
chuck it.
Yeah.
Space,
yeah, just create and just go against the grain, and they just go back. It's 1-on-1, and hopefully that big right side can go and put a ball away. But I think the BIC has really moved into the women's game, Mark, and now we're running it. Most teams have an outside that's a 6 rotation outside running that BIC.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it, but most Power 4 programs, most top 25 programs are going to have at least one relatively dominant BIC hitter. We're looking to try and hit about 200 out of that back row attack. If we're exclusively setting an in system, we want it to be a little bit higher than that, 250, because you are going to get those ISOs that we're trying to create for that outnumber reason, right? 3 blockers, 4 attackers. You can't block everybody.
Right.
I think a lot of other programs are kind of using it more as an outlet, as Frank mentioned, right? That mid-system ball, maybe I get pushed back to the sideline and I can't set it 30 feet to that go with any kind of tempo. If teams are smart blocking teams, they're going to release that out-of-system ball anyway. So instead of setting into a double or triple, can we give another option? I'm not looking for us to hit 250 on those types of balls as much, but can I stress? Can I keep them out of system? Can I maintain control of the rally? So this is kind of where we're at right now. We have a few pretty good back row hitters, and we're trying to go fast, but just want some more info about how to go about it. I don't have the playing experience from the men's game with all that background knowledge, so that's probably an area I don't feel the most confident with from a training perspective. So,
what percent of the time do you guys think to use run in system running a back row ball?
Currently, not as much as we'd like. We talk about a target of 10%. We are pretty terminal in the front row right now.
Yep.
Like our middles are lightning fast and have great arms, so we're going to work from the middle out And if we can throw that bick in also with as fast as we're trying to go zero tempo in the middle, like the middle bites, and suddenly there's bicks coming over the top, we feel pretty good about those, and we'd like to incorporate it a little bit more. 10 to 15%, I would say, is a good target for us. But
yeah, and it's one of the things you don't want to force it too, right? I mean, you're not gonna set a 250 ball when you're hitting 350 outside. Like it defeats the purpose of that. I mean, as a from a setter's perspective, you're trying to get the matchup. I mean, that's really what it is. And sometimes you have to set a ball to create that second or third ball that you're going to set later in that match or later in that set.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk a little bit about just from a technical perspective, what do we want that big player or that back row player to look like technically? As they approach, as they are reaching their peak, what does that arm change look like? Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I felt like when I was setting my teammates' bics, even with the club girls that we coach, it's like I think we initially air the set too close to the 10-foot line, and we're not comfortable leading someone that far. And I think the hitters aren't always right away super comfortable jumping right from the 10-foot line. They end up jumping from like the 13 or 12-foot line. Yeah. So I think that's like the first thing that has to get talked about and stressed is like, here's where maybe we start our approach. Here's when we make our first step. And the goal is to let's try and get to the 10-foot line as close as we can while not being a back row attack. And then the setters, like initially getting them comfortable with if they make a setting error, let's make it too far in front of the 10-foot line and really try to test the boundaries of how far we can make this back row attack make sense. And when does it start looking good? And then where's the set at when it starts looking good? But that's what we see a lot with the club girls is they set it too far back to start and they think that that's fast, and we start testing the boundaries a little bit more on how far we can go up.
So I think that's interesting because I've been at conventions and stuff. There's really you either try and push it as far as they can broad jump, or you put it a little bit closer to the 10-foot line so they're having a higher contact point.
Yeah.
I would like to customize each one to each hitter in a perfect world, right?
Sure.
If you have a broad jumpy kid, it doesn't make sense to set them at 10 feet. They can hit it at 7. But if you have a more vertical kid or a middle that flip to the right and now they're hitting Ds, maybe it makes sense to keep them at 9 feet so they can go vertical because that's more what their approach normally does. Like, I don't want to make a kid uncomfortable in the way they go about their jump. That's going to affect their other 90% of their swings, which are in the front row.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I think a lot of it is to do with like if you can just create some level of system and hey, I'm gonna put this at 8 foot, always 8 foot. That's where my setter is gonna go. If I'm a broad jumpy kind of a outside L2 ish, I might take off a little further behind and broad jump into it. And I think the beauty with the back row attack too is that you see more of the block in front of you, right?
Yeah.
And I think as a smaller offensive player, even in high school, like we run, even in boys high school in Hawaii, like we would run back row balls. And I think you could tool so fast and you can see openings really, really easily because the ball's there and everything's out in front of you. And I think if you are more of a, straight up and down, you can get closer to the 10-foot line and still 8 foot and still have that high to low action on your arm as well. I think that's the beauty because there's nothing in front of you. Right, yes, you have to leave behind the 10-foot line, but it doesn't say you have to get as close to it as every single time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we just see so many outsides starting really deep, and then they end up like really broad jumping as a because of how deep they're starting.
Yeah.
So like trying to get them to start in a place where they can still broad jump a bit, but also explode upwards instead of having to broad jump because they're trying to make up for being so far behind because of how deep they are starting.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue we see is like I'm playing middle back defense at 25, 26 feet, and now I'm going to start my approach from there.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's a pretty big runway.
Yeah.
It's like, can we get more into a realistic transition so that approach feels more natural like it would if you were on the go or the 5 or whatever?
Yeah, for sure.
And I think for the club teams that are out there and the high school coaches that are out there, I think as you integrate this, I think that's the biggest key. Is you're still transitioning. You're playing defense, and then if you're in the back row, you have to transition to your back row attack transition as well.
Yep.
And I think being prepared and ready for that ball, not getting caught off surprise by the ball, not calling for it only if it's out of system. I think those are all things that are kind of changes the mentality. Where the men's team, on the men's side, I think that's ingrained. They're asking for the ball even though the ball is over the net. On the women's side, I think there's sometimes defensive players can get caught, especially in club, just watching.
Yep.
And I think you're always doing something, and if you're not in that play, then you are either transitioning or covering or something else. Talk to me a little bit, Mark, when you guys are training the BIC specifically, what kind of timing are you guys looking for? Zero timing, 1, 2 step?
Yeah, so if we're doing a typical 4-step approach from a pin type of player, we're going to try and be on our second step at setter contact. And that's in system or mid system. I think we can go that fast. I think general height rule is top of the antenna is about as high as we want to set that ball, just to ensure that we're forcing our hitters to stay fast. I think that's the big thing we see is like as we get to mid system, it gets a little bit higher, and now do I wait? Do I go? It's like, let's force them to see how fast we can actually go, and hold them accountable to the height of that set while training, while we're trying to learn and perfect this move. The height and consistency can be maybe the hardest thing to adjust to, right? If we're going to try and go that fast, if it's slower, now we're decelerating through our approach, and suddenly I'm going to end up hanging and waffling this ball or having to tip or shot, and then that ball ends up inevitably getting behind us as well, and then we're in a really tough spot. So we're trying to go top of the antenna, second step. Haven't really timed clock walk, stop clock wise, like what that is from contact to contact, but it'd be, I'd say close to 0.6, 0.7 maybe.
A little bit faster on the men's side on that BIC. In some cases,
I think the foundation's the same, second step tempo, but like how high you go is probably just relative to the hitter. Like,
yeah,
that's probably true.
There's probably girls players that play Division I that jump higher than some of my teammates, just because they're taller than some of my teammates potentially. So I think it's still relative to the hitter, but it's still second step tempo for the BIC. The D ball we would set a little bit higher.
Yeah, and I've seen even
if they're a righty.
That's true.
I wish we had a lefty also on our team, and setting him the D ball was way quicker because the ball was already on his hitting side coming into him.
Right.
Where that righty D ball just lofting it a little bit higher was beneficial for him because it could get across his shoulder a bit longer.
And I've even seen some where you have like X middles that transition to either a right side or an outside, and that are coming out of the middle back to run that BIC tempo, that they're up.
Yeah.
And it becomes true trust, right?
Yeah.
As the setter, I'm finding them already in the air.
Yeah.
And that it's almost like a true zero tempo BIC ball, and that's really hard to stop.
Especially as you get towards the 10-foot line, like that makes it exactly like a front row attack at that point.
Right.
They just can't bounce at the same. So, but we can go even faster. I think that is really that's what I'd like to see a little bit more of, is like once we get to 10 feet, that becomes like our primary, and we're going to go super fast, and block has to make an adjustment. And then maybe we are still freezing the middle and kicking to the go, even from the mid system. If they're committing on the back row attack, like that would be ideal usage.
You literally have two middles.
Right.
Exactly. But
yeah,
that's a tough place to get to.
Well, absolutely. Let's start from a development. So if a team wants to start integrating the back row attack, what are some of the things system-wise that you want to talk to either the setter, your back row players, to then be more comfortable and make it integrate it into your normal system?
I would say the first thing for us is you don't have to crush it. You know what I mean? It is a hard set to block just by nature. You're off net. The timing of it is so relative. Like we got a delay as blockers on that back row attack and then jump, which is generally opposite of what we're doing in the front row, where we're taking off at the same time as that hitter. So knowing that you kind of already have an advantage from a block perspective, you don't have to just rip this ball 100%. I think like a good 60% like grooved ball into 1-6 is like as effective as anything else. You know what I mean? So set it without the expectation of kills right now to get used to setting it. And the arms will get faster as they get more comfortable through that training.
Yeah, I think with the club kids, if we're starting super young and they haven't ran a big before, they've probably ran ones before. So I think just like kind of like paraphrasing and be like, hey, we're gonna run a 1 for the back row, and kind of play from that point. They'll probably come in way too fast at first because you're gonna think like 1 1 1 1. But that's a cool place to work from, because then from there you can be like, okay, let's maybe set the back row 1 a little bit higher, and then you give it a name. You call it the Bic.
Yeah.
And the kids, and I think that's a really good place to kind of like take something that they already know how to do and just like find a transferable place for it in the back row.
I think there's a lot to be said of running a back row attack that's not a Bic, though, right? And I think maybe for those that are kind of starting out and teaching their kids how to hit that ball, I mean, I always like to just start in warm-ups and you're doing your self-toss and you're self-tossing from the back row. Yeah. Like, that is a great way to start, you know, that location. And to your point, Mark, high snap, control the ball, maybe into that 1-6 seam. You're either going to take the setter out or you're going to score. One of those two things if that setter's in the back row. And just identifying, you know, control. I think that's the very first part to start. And you don't have to run a Bic to be successful as a back row player. You can run that high back ball, whether it's a D ball, red ball, whatever you guys want to call that ball. I personally like, if you're running in a go, like, you can also run like a slide with a B and use something inside that you're going from left to right. And then you can really get into that zone 5, which is a hard ball to dig too. And all that's just still a high ball too, and as club and in high school you can do those things just to give a little more dynamicy.
What do we think about setting the libero?
I hate that.
You can't, but that does bring in, like, if you're going to incorporate the back row attack to your offense and you want it to go fast, like, the number one thing is the libero's in the way. Or that DS is in the way, because they're like already getting up to cover. And like, now I'm standing in the middle of the court and I'm about to jump on this.
They're just always getting dunked on as a libero.
Yeah.
It's so true, though. But I think you have to integrate that into your training, and every single player needs to know that something else is happening.
Yeah. That communication from the setter is like important, and I don't think liberos necessarily are always looking for all their offensive signs. But if you want to get a leg up on your coverage, right, know that your middle's hitting a 3 versus an A or a slide. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be easier. You don't have to react to everything. Right? Give yourself an advantage when you can, and knowing that Bic is there will keep you out of the way and offensively more successful, I would hope.
Yeah. I see so many high school programs, though.
Oh my gosh.
Setting the libero. Like, what are we doing? This is crazy. And she's calling for it. Libero's calling for it.
Hey, do you know they're offensive players? No, they're not.
No, they're not.
Just something we got to work through.
So talked about kind of getting it integrated. Do you like to run that in a 5-1, 6-2? Does it matter? From a setting perspective, what was your favorite type of system call to have and utilize that?
I think you can get obviously a lot more creative with what your back row players can do if you're running a 5-1, because it just opens up a slot in back right. So sometimes even if you're not running a D ball and you're in servicey, what's that, like row 5 or something, where your outside's back right. Well, sometimes it maybe makes sense to just keep them back right. Don't have them come around to the middle to run a Bic. Just have them run a D ball as an outside for the first ball. And, you know, you can do those things in a 5-1. But in a 6-2, there's no reason why you still can't run the Bic. I mean, you won't have a D ball unless you get really, really crazy with the back middle person, move them around. But I think you open up more runways in a 5-1. Allows your middle to do more stuff behind you. Makes the Bic look different, potentially. In a 6-2, you could still, you know, do some creative routes with your right side and middles where you put them both behind you, and then you still open up a more open runway for the Bic. But I enjoyed the creativity in a 5-1 and being able to use multiple back row attackers in different runways.
So in that 5-1 and in row 5 specifically that you brought up, right, your middle is stacked behind setters in the box. You got to go, and then you got a back row. Could be a D, could be a Bic. What are the situations, or what do you like to run opposite the middle path? And is it always opposite the middle path, or are you running like 5, which is just that right side ball, with a D inside of it? Like, are you stacking those, or is it always like middle wraps around in front and now we have a D option? Like, are you creating space away from the middle or trying to let the middle pull a block and then we're hitting over the top of it, I guess?
I think it's trying to assess in that situation, who do you want to give the ball to if you're in system? Assessing the matchups, assessing how your teammates have been playing thus far. So once you figure out, ideally, I want to set this or this potentially, then figuring out what you're going to do with the middle. If the middle isn't one of those people, what you're going to do with the middle so that when you set that person, you have space for them. Mm-hmm. So let's say we want to run the person that's running the D ball. It's row 5. The D ball is hiding. So they're in back middle.
Yep.
And this guy can hit the big still. It doesn't have to hit a D ball. So let's just keep him in that runway that he's in. And my back row outside, who's kind of now in the new D ball spot, he can run a D ball. Like if we've worked on those type of runs with everybody in that situation, let's just keep them where they're at technically and make the runways easier. And if I want to run that guy in the D ball coming from back middle, I can have my middle run a gap or in the 3, whatever you call it on your team. Mm-hmm. And then my guy's coming in a different runway. I can keep my middle on a right side ball. If that's something that is in his repertoire, he can run a right side ball. My middles didn't run a lot of slides. So it'd be a right side ball.
Not many men's. I guess back in the day, slide wasn't as prevalent. You're starting to see a little bit more now.
We are seeing more of it. We had one guy that did it, and he always got made fun of, but he'd always bounce the ball every time. So you can make fun of him while we score, which is cool.
Slides are hard to defend, man.
They are hard. So yeah, I think it's just assessing who do you want to give the ball to in this situation, and if it's not the middle, what can you do with the middle to create some seams because of all the different things that a middle can do.
Yeah.
So talking about seams and I guess attacking runways through those paths, let's say I don't know, I feel like a lot of kids, if they're going to hit that red or D or whatever, want to take that ball back to 1 and are ultimately you're bringing the block into play.
Yeah.
If we're doing that. Is it mostly just power direction of that runway? That's where I'm going, so I'm just going to rip through that space, or are they trying to shot? What do you see? What was most successful, I guess, for you guys when you were doing it?
I think our right sides who were playing front row they were more comfortable using their wrist to different places. So when they got the D ball that was already kind of close by the net, it wasn't that different. Besides just not trying to bounce it as much,
I think we always looked at the verticals that are happening and where we wanted to attack those verticals across the net, right? And on the net and in defensively. And I think from a back row perspective, I think it's most effective in serve receive because you have some level of understanding on where I want to attack, where everyone's going to be, and then you can really throw everything there, right? I think the beauty of that too is that if the pass is not perfect, and even if you're around the 10 foot, 11, 12 feet off the net, you can still run that where you want that back row attack with the same tempo and also attack the vertical that you want. So I always thought about it as, hey, this is my ability to ensure that I'm attacking and getting an advantage offensively against what I want to attack defensively. I think to your point though, a lot of athletes are coming in and they're just pot committing one way, right? So if it's a D ball, that ball setter is getting it maybe inside on a right-handed D ball, I think is the worst thing you can do because then all you're doing is coming outside in and now you're hitting it right into the middle.
Cross the middle blocker and to get it into zone 1, and that's your power direction.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think there's a lot to unpack on how you ensure that you're giving the same amount of options as a front row player and not really pigeonholing that player by where you're setting it, either inside on a D ball. Too far back on a back, then it becomes just a free ball.
Right.
To the
roll
other side.
Shot, tip, automatic if it gets on top of their head. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about, so we have a flare, which is a blue essentially. It's kind of at that 31 zone. But the pass that we take to get there, if you're right-handed and you start wide and we leave it inside, now they're looking wrist away, and then you're bringing the block back into play. I think that flare could be really, really effective. How would you adjust the transition point, I guess. Like, is it better to start closer to middle back and approach right to left? Or are we running more vertical? Like, how do you ensure that we're going to be able to get the angles that we need to hit this ball to that 1-6 seam, which is where your like natural pathway and hole in that block is going to be?
Yeah, I visualize that as almost like a 32, but you're starting from the back row.
Yep.
So like the outside or hitting a 32 front row, they would be more outside in. So I think if you can capture some of that, right, in the back row, that same angle of attack for the outside, they'd have to work really early to get to their left to then come back in on the flare. That might make the most sense for a righty, but that's hard because who knows where the outside's at on defense, you know?
And to me, the outside, like if we're going outside in, now your power direction is bringing the block back into play.
Sure, yeah. Well, their approaches, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it all depends too is what you're comboing that with. So if I'm running, slide go B-ball, flare, blue ball, right?
Yeah.
And I would have my back row player go inside out because then the slide is going here, pulling the middle, but you have a go ball, so your right side is kind of staying on the tempo. If you run that blue with just kind of like a 32-ish tempo, you're beating that outside coming in and you go into the 1-6 seam, right?
Yeah.
The other way you do that, you run the one ball and then you go the other way and you have them take 2 steps wide and then they go left to right into the court and you're trying to get into like the 6-5 seam because the middle should be popping on that in-system pass, and then you go high-low into the 5-6 seam. But I think it all depends on what's in front of you, right? I think I always when I always use my middle to then determine what happens behind me. I like to stack. I like to go, hey, I'm going to run, a 1 and a bick, right? And maybe do a little push bick to a right, just to the left shoulder,
over the top of her,
right?
It's getting real geeky over here. If you're at home trying to picture all this, visualize all this, we're gonna draw some pictures.
I like it. I do geek out about offensive approach pass and how front row can manipulate their block on their approach angle stuff and like what that's going to open up for you as that offensive hitter. Like if I'm approaching this direction, what's your block going to do? They're going to reach this way. That means your wrist away is open. You know what I mean? So I do geek out about like block manipulation. I think that's a really important and like hitters need to think about these things.
Yeah.
Like what are you telling your blocker you're doing?
Yeah.
So that they can adjust to get what you want out of it. I think that's really important. So, like, I'm visualizing all these things. I can see it. I can see all these plays as they're happening. I'm like, yeah, well, it's like, do I want to swing back this way? Like, your gap is still in this space. But, yeah, I agree. Everything is relative to what the middle's running. I think we're finding more success in setting away from space. Like, if we're in a 6-2 row and we overload in front, we'll run a red behind. And now we have a lot of open net, more freedom for a big arm to just go and rip and try and find some space. But to me, there's nothing more like aesthetically pleasing than running a 1, pulling a block, and then a fast Bix over the top and it's open net and everybody's like, like that's the best. Is it the most effective? I don't know, but
that really is the best, though.
It is the best.
I always picture like men's national team. That's like the picture in my mind offensively from a men's national team is, the setter coming up, tight ball, and everyone's thinking either he's going to be throwing that down, running the 1. All of a sudden you see this giant come from behind and just go high-low with no net, So
I think when you watch volleyball for so long, you just see the same patterns over and over and over. And then you see something that looks so different, and you're just like, oh, my gosh, that was incredible.
Yeah.
There was no block. I don't ever see that.
I think that's a big thing for us is, like, how do you differentiate yourself offensively from what is always seen? Sure. And if you're not going super fast to your pins, like, how are you creating unusual patterns that they're not used to blocking or seeing? So, like, that stuff's important. It's a good differentiator if you have the arms to do it. I guess. But that's always the caveat.
I don't know if any of you guys have seen this in the men's game international. Maybe a little bit of Division 1 too. Is the setter digs it, and the bit comes in flying like they're gonna approach, and they jump, and then they set someone.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of that? Do you think there's any potential for the women's game there?
I think there are so few really dominant big hitters that will draw a block or a double block like that they can't then recover. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think the risk reward is probably too high right now in the women's game to do that.
For sure.
And the skill set for that player is immense.
Yeah, and the amount of time it would take to train him to be able to do that
Backset
is
it.
probably like
Yeah.
our time could probably be spent better elsewhere, I would say.
It's so creative.
It is.
It's amazing when it's very deceptive and it does pull 2 blockers, but now like everyone is setting on their way down on that ball. You have to be able to locate as you're falling and broad jumping forward, which goes against almost everything that we train setters to do.
Yeah.
So like that's a tough one, but it's a cool play for sure.
Like whoever thought of the big, whoever came up with that, I'm sure they also were like, "Is this worth it?" You know, like, is this ever gonna make sense? You know, and now it's like, why isn't everyone running the big? You know, so I wonder what are the next things kind of like that? Like, is that what they're doing in the men's game with having that out of system pipe attack, so the setter digs it and you just skip the libero setting anyone, you just go right to an attacker? You know, is that the thing? You know, can you control digging that much where you can dig into an approach? Like, that's interesting. That would be really interesting to play against.
I mean, from a free ball perspective, you see that every once in a while, right? Someone gets a snap ball, free ball, and especially if it goes to the setter is just like, all right, I'm setting this ball right outside.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of that when I was at Division III. There was a couple teams that like that was their default. It's like if you tipped on the setter or whatever, she was gonna dig it to the outside and they were gonna go rip this ball. And I kind of like that idea. It's just different.
It's
right?
different. It's different. Yeah.
It's different.
But like you said earlier, you're always looking for a way for your team to create a different pattern.
I like that stuff on free ball base, right? If someone's sending over a free ball, they're probably not in a great situation. So the faster that we can attack back at them, the better. So if you can cut out a whole contact, like you're cutting out 2 seconds from contact to contact, like that would be big time.
Yeah, well, especially with that big ball, or even just a twitchy pipe ball. It doesn't even have to be a true bic, right?
Right.
Because then your middle back is already middle back playing defense. There is no transition at all, really. And then all of a sudden you just first contact, put a ball in the middle of the court. They're still scrambling on the net. Take that point.
I think it's not far off from what a lot of people do. Like when people will set over and the middle just like flicks a hand up and touches it. Like we're setting that next ball.
True.
That's about the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just picking up that tip is like, could we go a little faster? Could we eliminate? Like it's not a far off from that being a real option, but the awareness for your pin hitter to be ready, the awareness of the bic to be in a position from defense that they can get into their approach. Like there's definitely some variables that would need to be trained through it, but I like it conceptually.
Yeah, communication is everything in those situations, right? Just making sure that we're all on the same page. But I think the moral of the story of this episode is that there's so many opportunities when you leverage all of your players. And I think sometimes offense, we get stagnant and just say, hey, we have 3 or 2 offensive players in the front, and this is what we're running.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things as you go from a high school club into a collegiate is that I see setters never actually giving someone a back row call. And like that has to change immediately. Like you just have to always have someone ready, whether it's a bic, whether it's a right or a D ball, red ball, whatever you guys want to call that. But if you're out there in club and high school land, integrate it. It's not just an out of system ball. It's not a 15, 20 feet off the net. I'm going to chuck it up and let somebody swing at it. You leverage what you have in front of you on your team, and get them to think differently about offense.
I think it is that also.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I think that's a very effective use rather than chucking a hut way out there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Or like forcing that pin. Like you get a save of 5 to 10 jumps if we can set some of those mid-system, out-of-system balls to the bic, and the block has to respect it a little bit. Maybe there's a seam next time you go out-of-system to the go. So it's not just that, but I also think it could be used more in those situations at the club, at the high school level. Like, don't just always chuck it out to the 4, to the hut, to whatever that outside.
The final goal of the play is to score the ball, is to put the ball on the ground on their side. So best way to do that is with someone's arm. So if someone's on the court and they got arms on them, like teach them how to swing, teach them how to be part of the offense. Don't let them just be only a DS. If they're in that DS role, and they're not playing libero and they're allowed to jump in back row, let's still train them. Let's still have them call for the ball. Let's not just assume that people are going to remember you're back there as well. So, like, hitters build the trust, and setters, like, when you're running that big or that D ball, just try to, the goal of it is eventually to play it fast. So it's okay to make fast mistakes with it.
And stop setting your libero.
And stop, dude. If you're setting your libero, dude, I know she's calling for it, but
I think that is one of the most important skills for that undersized pin, right? As you progress to that next level, maybe you're not big enough to swing outside, but you can be a DS with an arm that we can set out of the back row. That's a huge advantage, right? You want to find your way onto the court, be an offensive option from the back row while balling out defensively and passing. Like, that's a great differentiator if you want to find the court, if you're an undersized pin at that next level.
Yeah, that is a huge tip. Yeah, that is a huge tip. You don't have to block, right? Yeah. So you're a great offensive player, continue to do that. Focus on your skills defensively, and you can get on the court and do multiple things. Well, this great episode. We geeked out a little bit on that. This was actually one of the first times we've really geeked out. Over 20 episodes, which, by the way, thank you for watching. We're over 20 episodes deep. We'll continue to drop these episodes on you. And until next time, blockheads.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Triple Blockheads. Make sure you like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss an episode.